Welcome to the SRS Podcast. I'm your host, Aaron J. Babyar, and I'm the Director of Support Raising Solutions. Whether you are a new ministry worker or a veteran looking to increase your competence and confidence, Support Raising Solutions seeks to bless you in your quest to be a spiritually healthy, vision-driven, and fully funded Great Commission worker. My guest today is the new Managing Director of Support Raising Solutions, Mark Wilson. And Mark is someone that has raised and lived off support for well over 20 years. So he certainly understands this from a personal standpoint, but also Mark has had the ability to help train and coach and walk with people who are in their support raising process. So Mark, welcome. It's good to have you with me today.
Thanks, Aaron, for the opportunity. I really appreciate the chance to be on this podcast and to dialogue about some of these things for the benefit of other folks.
Yeah. Well, personal support raising is, we have to put that emphasis on personal because sometimes even we'll have people that might come to an SRS boot camp and they start getting into organizational questions and which there's a time and a place for that. But typically the boot camp, that's not its focus. The focus is you, the individual, who is raising up a team of other, mostly individuals, perhaps a few churches, that are going to pray for you, partner with you in ministry so that you can accomplish the vision that you've been given. But as you know, Mark, personal support raising involves an awful lot of personal. There's a lot of self-leadership. There's a lot of self-organization, even administration, and there's just a lot to do in all of that. Both from a ministry standpoint, from a personal timeline standpoint, there's a lot of different things that can go into that. So that's kind of our focus today. That's why I invited you on, is just to talk about how you as an individual function within all the busy work and yes, very spiritual, difficult leg work and other things that have to happen as you're raising support. So let's just start right there. When I talk about, or when I say the word, the personal part of personal support raising, what does that elicit in your mind?
I think personal just always changes the focus on what does it require from me as a person. Where am I engaged? Where am I strong? Where am I vulnerable? What are my limitations? I mean, it gets me maybe a little bit introspective or reflective, just about, okay, I'm asked to do this task. And I don't think I would have asked those questions maybe even 10 years ago. I think I would have just jumped right in without considering all of those things, and sometimes when you're younger, you can kind of work through those. But I feel like at the stage we're at with, a kid in college and two in middle school and high school and, just all the things we didn't have before, I feel like there's an onus on me to be better prepared and better cared for and more organized than I've ever needed to be in my whole life. Right.
As you think back to the times when you've been involved in personal support raising, which I realize when you raise and live off full support, that there are seasons where you might need to add some more or you have changes or different things come up. What are some of the personal habits? Like I'm talking just like from the time of day that you do things or don't do other things to rest time and break time and play time and family time. How did you learn to organize that personally, but also what have you learned to coach others as they're really trying to find a new rhythm? Because it is so much not a just 9 to 5 clock in, clock out kind of job.
Yeah, I think, as an overarching principle, you have to realize that support raising is an as available work opportunity. And so what I mean by that is it's as your donors, your potential donors are available. And so what it means is your work hours are not traditional. So you have to give yourself some space and some freedom to operate in really different ways and to think differently. Because when I worked at the headquarters at Cadence, I didn't have a 9 to 5 job, but it was pretty close. I was in at 7:30 and out at 4:30 every day, but it was pretty standard. And this is not like that at all. And I had forgotten that part of it, in this stage. And so it's on people's lunch hour. It is at dinner. It is after dinner, our time when people are in their homes and available and done with their day and all their kids' activities. So it's really a different spot. And what that means is I had to go back and think of, okay, if my day kind of looks like these hours, what do I need to spend my other time doing? And so Kathy and I have done things like, we know in the morning, almost everyone that has kids, they're getting their kids out the door and they don't want to talk to you until their kids are to school, right? So we've spent that time. We get our kids to school. We go for a walk with the dog. And so we get a good chunk of relational time, and we get a little bit of activity. And then we come in and jump into support raising stuff, because sometimes at about 9 people have some space, but yeah, that would just be one. I think being smart with the time you have. What it means also too is when my kids come home from school, I started running with my 16-year-old, which is never a good idea when you're 45. but it's super cool because I'm not usually home at 3 when he gets home from school. So I just have shuffled, or and sometimes I've got a chance to exercise in the day when other people are working. But it just meant that rethinking about the way we do things and making the most of those times. And some of the other things too is just you got to build systems to track everything that you're doing. Mm-hmm. And I grabbed some spreadsheets, and I've got a column with all of our potential donors. I've got when I contacted them, what method I used. Did they respond? What date I followed up on? Did they say they were going to give? How much? So I just created, and so I will actually spend a good portion of my time. I think most of my time is spent sowing the seeds of getting to a face-to-face call or a meeting. And so, right. Tons of emails, WhatsApp. And so you got to have some time to do that every day. What's great about all those things is you can generate a lot of that stuff just about any point in your day. But the thing I think we're trying to figure out now that's a challenge, so I'll just say, is what it means is some of our kids' time, was dedicated to them, but now because many people are available in our evening, our kids aren't getting some space that they used to get from us. So right. We're having kind of adjust that. And then our weekends, a lot of people are available on Saturday or Sunday to talk about ministry. And so we're trying to, to make some times like, hey, we're going to go to coffee,
right.
Here, right. Or we're going to have lunch together here. But I just think we've had to adjust it because it has changed. So that's a whole lot of me talking. Aaron, any thoughts on your end? Like what have you guys done there?
Well, I know that my wife, Marky, and I, at the time of recording, we've been married, we're pushing 25 years. We're not quite there, but I was a youth pastor for quite a while. And when we stepped into a support raising type of ministry, and I didn't understand how much my schedule was changing. Now, fortunately, with youth pastors, they already kind of have a weird schedule most of the time. Right, so I was great with late evenings. But I had to learn, and I am kind of a morning person, so it wasn't that hard, but I had to learn, wow, you know what? Actually, a lot of people that I'm going to want to connect with, they're going to want to do that before work, which means a 7 or maybe even a 6 and a couple times a 5:30 a.m. coffee meeting. And I had to learn to not just, adjust my life around that, but my kids. We have 4 kids. And at that time, I had to think about who's getting the kid literally out of bed and into clothes and breakfast down the hatch, because my wife has some significant health problems. We've documented those before on the podcast, but she was in the early stages of some of her illnesses really becoming very clear and present as I was raising support. And so I remember there were many times where I had to tell people, hey, yeah, I'd be happy to meet with you. And they say, hey, how about we get together at 6:30? And in the back of my mind, I had to go, that's not going to work. I have to get the kids up at 6:45 to be in the car at 7:30 to get them to school. Okay. And I'd say, hey, actually, yeah, let's get together, but I need to help get my kids off to school. Would you mind meeting a little earlier, or could we do late in the day? And what I would find is in some cases, people would go, oh, wow. Hey, if you're willing to do earlier, I'm up early. I always go to the gym early. Yeah, I can meet you earlier. How about 5:30 or something? I'd be like, wow, yeah, okay, let's do that. Or the flip side, they say, no, that's kind of right on my way to work, and I don't really like getting up early. And I would just like adjust to them, and we'd end up doing a lunch instead, or something in the evening. There's several times where I would put my kids to bed at night and then go out and raise support. And I might get up the next morning and go out and raise support before I got my kids up to go to school. My wife and I have, and there's no bitterness here at all, but we've joked several times that in some ways I've been a single parent during certain bad health seasons for her. And yet that didn't excuse me from needing to work hard and personally adjust my calendar so that I could meet when potential supporters could meet. So that's one of the things that we learned. If I could just follow up with that too, the other thing is my wife is not constantly bedridden all the time. She definitely has seasons of that, but I needed a date time with my wife. Like I needed a day with her where not necessarily all day with her, but I needed a Sabbath during the week. And I wasn't getting it on Saturdays or Sundays. I was with the kids, or I had church stuff, or that's when people I could potentially meet with them. And so I had to rethink how and when I did my day of rest during the week, and then be intentional to try and take my wife to to get a bite to eat or go to a movie or something, and make it a date day as well. So for us, Monday became our day of Sabbath for several months. I mean, that was my time of rest. That was my time when I might return a phone call, but I wasn't initiating phone calls. I wasn't trying to work. In fact, I was trying to actively avoid it so that I would get some rest. So that's a couple stuff for me. What have you found as far as you with making sure that you have time to get in some exercise or time to still date your wife and time to be with the kids? What are some of the things that you've had to learn and to adjust? And I realize we're looking back several years, but then I also realized that as you transition from Cadence to Support Raising Solutions, you kind of went back into it again. So some of this is probably fresher for you than for me.
Yeah, when we were working at Cadence, we had a really clear routine, and things were, because my hours were traditional hours in the week, and I was working primarily on mobilizing and training staff. And occasionally I'd get a phone call from a support raising staff that needed something out of hours, but for the most part, that wasn't a big deal. It has been moving from that very structured environment to the unstructured has required a lot of changes from us. And I think, what's fun is I'm working out of my home most of the time. So when I'm in the morning organizing or in the evening, I'm here. And so I can say, hey, Kathy, you want to go for a walk? You want to go to lunch? And so we have these very impromptu conversations, or hey, we got to fix the toilet before we sell the house when we go to Home Depot. And so we gotta, so we're actually getting more time now because we were working two separate positions, and now we're working together. So we've got lots of good overlap. But we are getting some moments where it's just us, and I think that's super healthy. And then I think, again, like I said, just giving, I can be driven by guilt sometimes, or by I should be doing this. And it can push me to a place where I'm perpetually working. And I think just giving myself freedom to say, hey, you have worked a lot this week, and you're working on Saturday, you're working on Sunday. And this 3 hours is yours. Go do something, go on a bike ride, or go, work on a project that you enjoy.
Now you're talking my love language, man. Good luck.
Yeah. Right. And I have, like I said, I pushed nobody. I heard a great quote. They said, nobody else can be responsible for your health. You have to be. And so I think my spiritual health, my physical health, those things are my relational health. Those are my responsibility. And I've got to make moments for those.
Right.
Right. And I'm actually finding that because of the fluidity of support raising, I feel like I'm getting more time with my kids and my wife than I have when I was working at the office, which it's kind of a weird thing, but I think it allows for some more space.
Right, right. And if the listener's kind of confused here, kind of what's going on here is Mark and I are recording this at a time where he has technically left Cadence International. He is onboarding with Support Raising Solutions, but he has needed to raise some extra support for that transition, as well as for just the cost of healthcare and things like that.
It's important now and then that we mention that we have a resource available to those who help train and coach others that are raising support. The SRS network really isn't for everyone, but it is for those who are seeking to shape direction, build infrastructure, elevate training, and multiply coaching in their ministry culture. We can provide individual or organizational access to other support-raising resources in order to help you help others who are within your ministry. Learn more at supportraisingsolutions.org/network.
Hey, Aaron, what are some of the ways you found that you can stay healthy in your support raising experience?
Well, I've learned probably some of the similar things to what you said. I found that, I'm just a little over a mile or so from a pharmacy. And in my context, I need to go there frequently for my wife. And so I don't drive there. It can literally take me 4 or 5 times longer, but also that's another sedentary thing to drive there. So I'll ride my bike there. In fact, I even invested about $100 at a neighborhood garage sale and got one of those old granny bicycles with a basket on the back. Let me tell you, I look cool on that thing. But seriously, it's an easy way to get some quick exercise during the day. And actually, I have a standing desk. And so, even though it's been a while since I did the bulk of my support raising, I definitely picked up over time that if I sit and sit and sit while I'm working, I don't burn as many calories. I don't feel as healthy. I actually have less energy. So I've learned, I'm a stander. I'll stand several hours a day to just help me be healthy. But I think probably one of the most applicable things for most people who are raising support is, I'm not saying you have to count every calorie, but be mindful. You're doing a lot of sitting, drinking coffee and eating meals, and there might be certain days if you're not careful, you'll overeat by double, if not triple, because you'll have the opportunity to do so. So there are times when you might have already had lunch and now you're having another meeting at a different restaurant that smells really good, and maybe you just need to order a cup of coffee, or a tea or something like that, because you're in a different meeting with a different person. And that's not rude for you to tell them, hey, I ate late today. I'm just going to have a cup of coffee. Please, will you go ahead and eat? And let's talk and share. And of course, still buy their lunch and all that kind of stuff. So that's a few things I picked up. And that's separate from just trying to have some sort of, regular workout routine. And I'm seasonal with that. I have seasons where I'm really into it. And I have seasons where I need to get back into it. So, but by no means would I say that I am like the model, the picture of health, but certainly picked up a few little tips like that over the years that I would say has significantly helped me, even though my schedule continues to be a bit uneven. And I know that most support raisers, their schedules are very uneven. Hey, let's turn this though a bit, Mark, and let's talk about the spiritual side of things. As you and I both know, spiritually healthy is by far the most important thing, hands down, when it comes to being spiritually healthy, vision-driven, and fully funded. I think most people that would be listening to this podcast are going to be similar to what might be like a senior pastor in a local church, that you already get to read your Bible for work. You already get to talk about Jesus to others all the time. You get to be somewhere where people are worshiping Jesus. That's a blessing. But man, some personal habits and some personal disciplines, those are things that shouldn't disappear just because you're in a season of raising support. What are some things that you have learned to make sure that you're not just reading your Bible for your next newsletter verse or whatever, Mark?
I can get real mission driven, and so things can get very functional for me. And I'm reading a book called Longing for God by Richard Foster. Mm-hmm. And it's a really fascinating thing. It's helping me. Here's how it's helping me. The point of the book is, yes, we need to read the Bible for its accurate content and, for historical theology, all those things. But you also need to read it so that you are getting to know your creator and your savior. And it's just got some really interesting insights. And so I have really tried to make my Bible time very personal, in terms of, what do I see here? How am I understanding the Lord? And it probably sounds, I don't want it to sound overly spiritual, but for me, in my personality, it's helping me take in the text emotionally. What were the characters feeling like, or the people in the text? How were they responding? What would it have been like to be in their situation? How did God meet their need? And it's made it really, I'm engaged in it in this point in my life, where I'm understanding, what it was like to be David, where Saul is pursuing him, or, or when David gets back, working with the Philistines, and all of the women and children have been kidnapped. Like the men wanted to stone him, and those, how was God real to him in that moment? How disappointing was it that his leadership cost all of the men in his unit? So those things have been very, very helpful to me. And then, when I'm running or doing things, I've tried to enjoy sunsets or sunrises, or, just to take a moment and say, wow, God, this is pretty great. And even last night I was doing a bunch of work. I was updating my spreadsheets for all the people I had just contacted. And the Lord just said, Mark, I want you to pray for every person on this spreadsheet. And so I just stopped and went through and tried to pray for every. And so I think those are the things that I'm getting. And I'm not a super structured guy. And I have started journaling too. That's been a new thing for me. It's just writing down what I'm feeling and engaging, especially in this transition time. And there's a lot of uncertainty. And it's been fun to go back and read, 2 months later, like, Lord, where are you in this? And now I know where he is 2 months later.
Yeah.
But those are some of the things that we, that I have done. And then, we Kathy and I that's my wife, we have a real open conversation about where we're struggling and what we're engaging with the Lord on, and just processing with somebody helps too. I think that's a real helpful person. And I think having somebody who's just talking to you about your spiritual well-being during support raising, that's been super helpful to me, to have people go, so how is this, Mark? Where are you at with that? Are you engaging with the Lord? Are you being the dutiful servant, or are you being the son? And some of those questions have been very helpful, because I fall into the dutiful servant many times. Yeah.
Good word.
Aaron, what are some things there that you've experienced as you've been doing this for a while too?
I need to stay in the Word. I mean, honestly, I do. And that sounds like such a Jesus Sunday school answer. But creative ways of staying in the Word, I think, is good. But I know that one of the things that I've done more recently is, and I'm not even in a season of full-time support raising anymore, but, there are little things that you can do. So a couple things that I've done recently, and I do get bored with doing the same thing, so I change it up quite a bit. I really appreciate the people that can get up at 4 a.m. Every day and spend an hour in the Word. But that was never me. But there are other ways of connecting with the Lord. So more recently, we're blessed with some athletes in our family, and so I've spent some time listening to the book of Proverbs with my son as we drive to 6 a.m. basketball practices. It's just kind of something that we do. And I'd be lying if I said it happened every day, but it's happening frequently. And it's been a couple of good times when I've been able to say, hey, man, let's talk about that verse for a second. And it's been good. There's been a couple of times where I've tried to make that happen, and he said, Dad, it's not even 6 a.m. yet. You got to stop. I'm not awake yet. but that's been a good thing. Another thing that's been good for me is to, listen to worship music, and even in my own terrible way, maybe sing along a little bit while I'm just doing some basic, stretches or some basic exercises before I start my work day in my office. So those are a couple of the things, and some similar things with like what you shared about relationship with my wife. But we do want people to be very mindful that seeking the Lord is not something that you do just about, God, give me money. I mean, he understands that you have the need, and you should ask him to provide, and ask him how he's leading, and that's a part of the support raising process. But that's not the purpose in and of itself of your relationship with your Creator. And so start there. That's just probably my biggest advice is for anybody, whether they're in support raising or a different season of life, is continue to seek first the kingdom of God and seek that relationship with Him first and foremost, and then realize how your support raising process can integrate with that, and that it's not an interruption. It's the most important thing in your day. So. Well, Mark, we probably went a little bit longer than what we meant to, and yet I think this is a good information that might be helpful for someone as they're entering into or re-entering into their support raising process. Any final words of wisdom that you give to someone who needs to pay attention to their personal side of personal support raising?
One thing that we didn't quite get to, but I'll throw out there, Kathy and I have a friend who's in Pramerica, and they will do a free financial needs assessment. So they go over all of your assets, your net worth, your debt, all that stuff. And they kind of help you come up with a custom plan to get where you need to be financially with retirement, education, and all those things. And so why I'm telling you this is on the personal side, when we had that done before we started working on our support needs for SRS. And it was great. We knew exactly what we needed to budget for retirement and for housing and all of those things. And so I just would say if anyway, you can reach out to me at SRS. I can get some connections for you guys. But that knowing what you need before you go in is really helpful because it gives you such a clear benchmark to start raising support.
Very, very good word. I know that there are a lot of people that have used Crown Financial Services, or they've gone through support raising solutions. Yeah. Have you ever heard of that? No, they've gone through Dave Ramsey's Financial Peace University. That was significant to my wife and I years ago. I actually look back on that as one of our most helpful forms of marital counseling we ever did. So that's a very good word. Very good word. People need to know where they're at. Well, it's been a pleasure to have you again, Mark, and continue to build our relationship. And I'm excited for your onboarding with Support Raising Solutions, and with you being the managing director. You're going to be a breath of fresh air that's going to continue to help us in loving on it and training Great Commission workers to be spiritually healthy, vision-driven, and fully funded. So thank you for being with me today.
Man, thanks for the opportunity. And I just, it's almost like a dream. I can't believe that such a fantastic opportunity fell our way. So we're thrilled to work with you, Aaron.
God bless.
Thanks for joining us for this episode. We would love to hear your ideas for future content. Please visit supportraisengsolutions.org/feedback to share your thoughts and questions. Also, wherever you download your podcast from, be sure to subscribe for future episodes and come back each week to gain more insight into the process of building and maintaining your personal support team.